100 degrees, guys, and it is October 30th. I don't remember it ever being this hot this late into October. Direct overhead, LAFD. So you got your direct overhead, notice the trajectory, so here's where I'm standing. You get the direct overhead. Gang stalking for uploading reptilian shapeshifter movies to YouTube. Here we have a helicopter approaching for a direct overhead, looks like. So he's headed straight for me. Straight for me, black and white. See how slow he's coming? So this is an arrival home buzz, black and white LAPD, your taxes. For gang stalking for reptilian exposure.
They're ugly.
They're ugly looking lizard, alligator type people.
He said the sergeant, shapeshifted in front of him, turned into a reptile.
So I had a dream about Nick Fuentes, and I'll play it here, and then but after I had that dream, then I found this movie about him, but I'm not sure if it's true, and I don't want to publish it, but or talk too much about it, because actually for the most part I really like Nick, and and I'm not like addicted to that, but I just got the feeling that I didn't want to make too big of a stink out of this, because I really don't know. I mean, it's when I listened to him, and then when I looked at the things that this guy said in Hidden America, whatever that channel, that guy, I don't know. I can't put the two together, so I don't know. What do you think?
Okay, here's some notes. So I had a dream just now on November 1st around 4 a.m. and it was about Nick Fuentes, and there was he was like greatly succeeding, and it was almost like I saw in my mind like an assembly line of people that were changed by him, that that had become allies of him. And even though at that moment in the dream, the people that were opposed to him had the advantage, but there was a feeling of inevitability that he was going to win in the end. And in the dream, someone was saying that they were impressed at all the people that were willing to take a physical modification of some kind, that were Nick Fuentes' followers or supporters, and someone was saying, I don't know who it was. It was just like someone who knew what was happening, and they said that they were greatly impressed by the fact that people were willing to accept it was like a brain modification, like some kind of augmentation, like a brain augmentation like we see in Ghost in the Shell or other sci-fi, where people, and even some of these super soldiers that report partial cyberization. You get a brain augmentation, help your memory and reaction time and all that. Anyway, it was so that was and then that was, and I saw, it was like I saw like an assembly line of people. And even though at the current political moment, in that moment, the people that were opposed to him had the advantage, and so he was kind of having to hold off somehow, like hold back, and not fully wasn't able to fully move forward at that moment, like with an immediate victory. But there was a sense that he was headed for an inevitable victory. And that voice said, I'm greatly impressed at all the people that were willing to take the enhancement, the augmentation, that was like a physical, artificial augmentation, and impressed because of the fact that normally Christians wouldn't be willing to accept like some kind of artificial, thing done to their bodies. So whoever was speaking was saying that they were impressed that they had overcome that to some extent, or had made a right choice from that person's perspective that was speaking, over their Christian concerns about some sort of artificial enhancement to the body. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting dream, and I thought I would include the notes about that here.
All right, so we got a bombshell video from this guy called, or his channel is called Hidden Amuruka, Amuruka, whatever. I'll put it on the screen here. And I've seen this twice now, and I've got to say, my mind is officially blown. First of all, if this is true, and I think it is, I think this, or I should say, if this guy is mostly right, I think, he may be off about a few details, but if his overall thrust is right, then it matches a lot of what we've seen. And as I felt into what this guy was saying, okay, and this guy, this video, if you see it for yourself, link's gonna be below. Check it out for yourself. I don't want to. Maybe I'll play a few clips of it here in the beginning of this movie, but check it out for yourself. First of all, there's a few things I might point out as being, it's not necessarily means that, so this is a really bad, kind of thing to say about somebody. It's like a really damaging thing. But here's what rhymes, okay? Now, I don't want to make too big of a deal out of this, because people have adventures in their youth. But one of the first things he talks about is his Nick Fuentes' episodes with, and I've never heard this term, cat boys, okay? And so now this guy in the video, he says it's not a well kept secret, okay? Now, now, again, this could be, okay, so there's the most damning evidence that I saw was a screenshot of this, what looks like, a homosexual boyfriend, kind of effeminate kind of character wearing kind of a cat costume, okay? And there's a caption of him saying, who am I going to tell I gave Nick his first kiss, or something like that, which I have to say, I don't know, and I don't want to, spread rumors that might not be true, but I just have to say that there's kind of a ring of truth there, okay? Now, make up your own mind and decide what you think as a Christian, and before the judgment of Jesus Christ, what, you want to be known as saying about others. That's what I try to keep in mind here when you don't know what the story is. And another thing too, people have adventures in their youth, all right? So if he did a little experimentation or whatever. Now look, and even if he's even if he is full-blown gay, the main thing I would hold against him is just not being forthcoming about it. Now maybe he was. But I don't think I don't think he would have the Groiper army and all that if he came out and just said, yeah, I had a little, boy on boy fun, shall we say. But yeah, I mean, it just there's something about him too, and and I don't have a competition of who's the bigger hypocrite, because I'm no paragon of manhood myself. But if I was gay, like let's just say if I was bi, okay, I think you can kind of tell. Now, and what I was gonna say is, though, I think I would be, I try to be honest about it, say, okay, I'm, you know I don't. I've never had that. I've never had attraction towards the same sex. It just this hasn't been one of my issues. But there's something about the way his hands are, And like I said, my hands are kind of bony too, so maybe I kind of look, gay too. But I don't know. There's something there, and then the what kind of see it's that mixed with the rest of it. So he goes on to say that Fuentes is actually a crypto Jew, Spanish, that is Spaniard from Spain, where he goes into the narrator of this video, Projection, the Double Life of Nick Fuentes. He goes into how there were these Jews that were in Spain that the Spanish people there in Spain at the time got pissed off at, as they tend to do, if you've investigated this. And they came against them, and they said, you have several choices. You can die, you can convert to Catholicism, or you could leave the country. And a lot of them converted to Catholicism, but they became those that led a double life. Basically, they stayed loyal to their Jewish ancestry, but on the outside they pretended to be Christians. Okay, so and this guy goes into this pretty good, or I should say very, very well presented story of, that Fuentes is actually one of the names of a house that was there in Spain. And then he goes on to say basically that the whole narrative that he carves out for this movie is that this guy is a controlled opposition agent, okay, and that basically he knows it, and so that's the mind-blowing thing. So he's Jewish and gay, but hold on, that not necessarily, because if he isn't a practicing Jew, then I wouldn't call him necessarily a Jew. I would say he has Jewish background, or Jewish heritage, okay, so Jewish lineage, okay. But even that, in this current environment where people are hyper, sensitive about that, and I think I have to say justifiably concerned. Doesn't mean all Jews are bad or anything like that. It's just, now in this environment where we see a lot of this, but once again, they're a highly identifiable race, and so conspiracies and evil, satanic, child molesting, horrible crap is shared across the board. Black, white, or brown, Catholic, Jew, whatever, atheist, everyone. There's every race is involved in heavy, sick evil. But it is ironic. So with this guy, the hidden Amaruka, whatever guy, says is that the whole reason that the Nick Fuentes character is coming against the Jews is because it's designed to obfuscate, kind of deflect in a deceptive way, and gather all of those kind of extremist elements in order to diffuse it. You've seen this whole, I'm not going to explain the whole controlled opposition logic, okay, but he goes into it, and I have to say, I mean, he at least puts together this video is well done. there's a few things that he points out. Like he shows a picture of Nick Fuentes doing the Nazi hand sign, which he may have done that just as a joke, and he just shows it as a picture. You know, he doesn't go into a big, you know, soliloquy saying, look, he's a hidden Nazi or anything, but you know, just showing that as kind of another defamatory picture, I think is questionable, because he could have just been joking, and that doesn't, you know, if he's making a serious video about the problem of Nick Fuentes, I think you should stick to the evidence that is, you know, is usable. But maybe he wanted to include that for whatever reason. In any case, this guy is, you're gonna say, well, then aren't you duped? Yeah, I fully admit it. If that's true, I was duped, because I didn't see that coming at all. But when this guy mentioned it, and another thing he goes into the section, he goes, and now for something that doesn't lie, the money. Now, I just have to say, when I saw the thing about his bank account, his Bank of America account being frozen, which, you know, I talked about, and I'm like, this is unbelievable. But at the time that it was frozen, he had $500,000 in there, okay? Now maybe he is so popular. And first of all, the one thought came to my mind is, if he was debanked and deplatformed, where did he get that money? Okay, like how many people are supporting this guy? Now maybe he's got a wealthy benefactor, and that wealthy benefactor doesn't have anything to do with some sort of Jewish conspiracy, which is what this guy, this hidden Amaru Ka, and it's like it's probably like an Egyptian word for America, like the America that I heard was used as a Indian word, Amaru Ka, meaning serpent, like a that was another word for serpent. He makes the case that it is a big, you know, this was actually done. Now, I would say, first of all, it's believable, but if it is true, let's just say it's true. First of all, probably maybe Nick Fuentes didn't know about a lot of it until maybe more recently. But if you ask the question, you know, even still, you know, that's a lot of money, and that was before the big blow up with the Tucker Carlson Candace Owens interview, in which everybody saw that and they're like, whoa, wait a minute, who's this guy Nick Fuentes that Tucker Carlson calls gay twice? And that's another thing that kind of ties into what this guy was saying, is that either Tucker Carlson had inside information that he was gay, or or maybe he saw the information of his affair with the Cat Boys or whatever, or he tuned into it, or he kind of just kind of like looked at him and he had that kind of that hit about him, you know, and that's why. And but the fact that Tucker Carlson goes on national TV, he's got a huge platform, okay, huge. I mean, I would say most conservative Americans are watching Tucker Carlson's channel on YouTube, in which, in a 12-minute rant about Nick Fuentes, calls him gay twice, which I remarked upon. Like, wow, this is what? You're calling a fellow Christian, a Catholic, gay twice? Do you know him? Do you know he's gay? Where's the evidence? If you're gonna say he's gay, okay, you know, and he's supposed to be a Christian, okay, you know, not like what's that guy's name? Glenn Greenwald. You know, Glenn Greenwald is gay, but at least he's, you know, he's not saying he's a Christian, and he's not, you know, and he's open about it. He's not a closet, okay? He's not a closet gay. So that's the main issue, is if you know, if Nick Fuentes is, you know, kind of putting forth this persona, and, you know, specifically saying that he's not gay, but then it turns out he is, that's where you could be like, you know. But so everything combined, the money, the as according to this guy, not well kept secret that this guy has a proclivity to boys. Okay, that's the biggest deal. But then, then the name. So he points out the fact that Fuentes is actually one of these Spanish crypto Jew names. Doesn't necessarily mean that all of that is connected. But then the linchpin is the total denial of the fact that it totally looked like the Jews or a Jewish interest, Israeli interest behind the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Because that right there, you see, that's, you have to ask the question, okay, so let's just say it ended up being his opinion that it was not Israelis or a Jewish interest behind it, when all this evidence, Charlie Kirk coming out against all that, and for him for Nick Fuentes to then not even kind of talk about why he didn't think that. You see, that's the point. Okay, if that ended up being his opinion, that it actually was that Manchurian Candidate, with the evidence that comes out on the mainstream lying news. Oh yeah, the shell casings of with Kash Patel, the confirmed liar, and all that. Okay, maybe you miscalled one, or you just got sick of the whole blaming it on the Jews thing, and you just, for this one, you wanted to say But the fact he didn't talk about why, that is what is suspicious, because he should have at least gone through a few. Okay, so here is why I think it was this one, that weird guy that was dating that gay guy, whatever, that got on the roof, Tyler Robinson or whatever that guy's name is. He should have at least explained that, talked about that a bit, but he didn't. I didn't hear anything about that. So it is kind of suspicious. It does look like it is what that guy said it was, which is that basically it was like a test to see whether he would, that was a line that he couldn't cross. And then he points out that when he didn't, then he gets all these breaks. That wasn't the main thing that got him on because that happened after he had the interview with Candace Owens and all this other stuff. And he was, some of it, it's kind of, it's stretching a bit, could it be that that's what kind of broke the ice on the whole thing, and why all these different people were willing to talk to him all of a sudden, and then he really blew up in popularity, and all these people started to, accept him as, somebody that you could actually have on your show, and then his popularity exploded, even though, all this stuff. But this guy makes a pretty good case that even though he may not have realized it consciously, he was, in fact, it was part of a deep state, or should I say, really a Satan's plan for this guy to be another level of distraction, gathering up all of those to basically misdirect any real grassroots opposition to what he knows the American people are going to want to rise up against and organize against. So what you do is you put forward a voice that even brings some of the rhetoric of that in a solidified way that hasn't been done. The same as David Icke, the same tactic as David Icke. It's a way of getting ahead of the issue and then controlling it with that figure, that main central figure that becomes the trusted voice, because he came out with that revolutionary exposure of an issue, the solidification, the voicing of his Nick Fuentes, the America First thing. And if it is, let's just say it is. Now, I don't know. Let's say it is. I think it is. I have to say, I do think it is. That's just my feeling after looking at that and thinking about the money and the fact that he didn't even talk about why he didn't think it was Israel. Because usually, at least if everybody thought that, you should at least take it apart, why you don't think. But he didn't do that. Okay, see, very suspicious. Didn't do that. So if it is, I would say this: with that kind of power of planning, okay, whether it's Satan or the Jews or a collaboration between the two, however it works, the forces that are against us, against a righteous government of some kind for our country and the world, are so powerful with that kind of advanced planning that if we the righteous on the other side of it, okay, we the duped, okay, we the cattle, if we don't have any thinking like that, if we don't have that kind of power behind us, what freaking chance do we stand? Okay, how are you gonna really oppose them? Okay, except for an all-out ship fight, which, you know, they control that too. So it's kind of, as I've been saying before, the force against the people who want the truth and a fair and just society is so powerful that and their power to squash anybody who's truly an enemy of that agenda. And that's another thing he points out. You know, if he was truly an enemy, he wouldn't have gotten not even close to the money, power, and recognition that he has. I'm talking about Nick Fuentes. If he really was an actual enemy to Satan's kingdom, shall we say, put it that way, or the American deep state government owned and controlled, or shall we say the Jews are a major factor of the management of that, but ultimately it is Satan's kingdom. Actually, ultimately it is God giving it to Satan and to gather up all those. And I was thinking about this too, that really it's God doing this. Okay, that's the thing about it. It's not like God is, you know, up in heaven and looking down at this and shaking his head in anger at what Satan's doing. No, I think it's more like that it's God that's doing all this, but for a lot of the evil and stuff that needs to happen, he puts an evil manager in charge. Okay, we got Satan, but I was thinking even deeper is that a deception needs to happen to gather up all the people that won't see. Many are called but few are chosen, right? So the many that are called but not chosen, meaning that they just don't make it, they didn't show themselves righteous in this life for whatever reason. It's very hard to point the finger at somebody else. Hey, that guy, see what he does, that guy. Hard to say. I mean, there's things you can point and say, oh well, you know, probably not, but you don't know. Who knows what somebody that might repent and end up being more righteous than you, who lead this squeaky clean Christian life. Okay, so you don't know. But all of the ones that are not chosen need to be gathered up. They need to somehow be kind of led into a situation for a purpose that culminates in what has to be experienced during the tribulation, which is, you know, the worst time that ever has been or will be in the earth. I was talking to somebody about this who was just happened to be emailing me at the time, and I said to him in an email that, you know, and he responded to a link to that movie that guy did, Hidden Amaruka, whatever, and he said that he thought it was legit, and that you know, he was commenting on some of the points that I thought were salient, which is that no one who's an enemy of Satan's kingdom has that kind of money. But on the other hand, it's hard for me to really like I'm not solidified that this is like a complete controlled opposition, knowing shillbag. I mean, it is suspicious, definitely. The main thing that he, you know, at least didn't talk about whether he made that decision, final decision or not, that it was basically a Jewish interest that did in Charlie Kirk. But then again, there's room for error, and it's hard for me to put together after listening to him, because he just seems, he's so likable, you know, he's so funny, and frankly, you know, but I mean, that could be all, you know, part of the programming, you know, so I don't want to sound like I'm too naive about the or willing to stare the dark, ugly truth in the face, that he could really be bad news, and that we have to you know, face that and look at the facts. For instance, someone who's really a Christian, I believe, includes God's word in his discussion, not just give it lip service, you know. And I don't mean, again, to people who aren't priests, whose specific job isn't to talk about God, but at the same time, if your thinking and your thoughts and your life are not about God, I think that we know Christians who are dedicated and who have looked at God's word, and God says He is the Word, and that His words are pure. The theme that you derive is that you must be adherent to God's word. Therefore, it should be whatever you're doing publicly. And whenever you're speaking, especially for an extended period of time, you're talking about God's word. Psalm 12:6, the words of the Lord are pure words.